Good morning, everyone. It's Sybil Starr. I'm here to give you the astrological update on the Scorpio New Moon, which is very intense. This Scorpio New Moon falls on here in California in Pacific time. It is on October 27th at 8:40 p.m. And it is at 4 degrees, 5 degrees, almost 5 degrees of Scorpio. So just say 4 to 5 degrees right in there. And I just returned from a spiritual pilgrimage to Egypt, where it really felt to me like this Scorpio new moon had already was in play. It was very much of an inner journey for me. And that's where the Scorpio new moon is taking us. We are moving into the dark time of the year when the veil is very thin, moving into the time of Samhain, which is the Celtic New Year, which is the end and the beginning. It is the time of year when the veil is thin and our beloved dead are very close. And so psychic realms and the realm of the shadow and the darkness is growing. It is a time of death and rebirth. Like I said, it is in the Celtic New Year. It was in the Celtic wheel of the year. It was the New Year. It was the end of the year and the beginning. And that's very much what Scorpio is about. It is about the process of death, transformation, and rebirth, and what that looks like in our lives. It is about releasing what we no longer need, and it rules the elimination tract. So it is about eliminating all the things in our lives that no longer serve us. And what that takes for that to happen is emotional honesty. Emotional honesty with ourselves, emotional honesty with others. It takes the courage to be honest with ourselves, to be able to recognize what really is no longer working so that we can let it go. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's just simply cleaning out our closet, things that, the old baggage that we just no longer need. Scorpio is very much about feeling. Scorpio, you can't get through this time of Scorpio without feeling. The title of this article or of this talk, I want to say, is really The Only Way In Is Out. This is very much of an inner journey, and the inner journey takes us into the realm of feeling. And sometimes that can be, takes a lot of courage to allow ourselves to feel, to slow down and allow ourselves to feel what really needs to be felt. Scorpio can intensify feelings. And it's important to recognize that we move through these feelings, just like the moon, which represents our emotional body. We move through these feelings. The feelings change. And just because you're feeling one way at one moment, it's important to know that you will move through that and feel differently. So the realm of feeling, is everything from joy and bliss to envy, anger, and sorrow, sadness, and grief. And often it brings, the time of Scorpio can bring up old, let's just say old emotional feelings that we have not allowed ourselves to feel. And when we slow down and allow ourselves to go in, it is a gateway of emotion that we need to move through. And sometimes in this time of year, it can be a time of loss. When we move into Scorpio, many people, many souls that are close when the veil is thin decide to cross on over. And as they do, we might find ourselves in the midst of a lot of loss. And knowing and allowing ourselves to feel that loss. When we numb our feelings, we don't really move through that gateway of emotion. It is also a time of our own shadow, embracing our shadow. I have found this experience myself. I'm going to say that this trip to Egypt brought up parts of myself that I'd prefer not to own or look at. But as it did, I became to the awareness that there really is no difference between dark and light. It is all parts of who we are, and it is coming to wholeness. And how we embrace, I became aware that those shadow parts of myself that I didn't like, that I wanted to maybe blame on others, when I embraced them, and just know that was part of me. That is part of who I am. And this is a part of me that I just haven't loved. When I was able to do that, I was really able to, I'm going to just say, move through any feelings of self-judgment. That's what it's about. It's self-acceptance and self-love, and we can embrace the darker parts of ourselves and own them, and especially not project them onto other people. So it is a time of inner work and great soul healing, this Scorpio new moon. The Scorpio new moon is also opposite the planet Uranus, which is in Taurus. And Uranus brings great change. And so there might be, and there's an old cliche that has to do with Uranus that says, expect the unexpected. And so this can be a time with the Uranus very tightly opposing this new moon, that some unexpected changes can happen in our lives, especially in our relationships. Scorpio is very much about intimacy. So it brings in our intimate relationships. And so there might be some things come to light that have not been known before. Secrets, things that have been kept secret are suddenly brought to the light. Uranus has to do with awakening. And so it can be some big awakenings about our relationships as well as ourselves, deeper levels of self-discovery. We're in a very psychic time where we're really walking between the worlds in many ways. And so there can be some incredible downloads, some incredible insights that maybe you weren't ready to know before, but now you are. It's about, also Uranus is a planet that has a lot to do with the weather, and especially wind. And here in California, we are experiencing a lot of wind. And Uranus in Taurus has a lot to do with earth changes. And so we might expect some pretty intense weather patterns, not only of wind, but of just shaking, just kind of shaking all around, kind of like the earth shaking. And Uranus in Taurus is also teaching us about listening to Mother Earth, listening to what it is she is trying to tell us. And it is also about staying grounded and centered in the midst of a lot of change, personal change, earth pattern changes, changes in the outer world. Yeah, and so and the other piece is, Scorpio is very much about sexuality, and Uranus and Taurus is very much about the body. We might find our Kundalini rising, that there are some incredible energetic openings as things are kind of shaking us. So kind of just being aware of those kinds of changes being possible. The Sabian symbol for this new moon, I want to read it, is a massive, unchanging, rocky shore resists the pounding of the sea. And I think what it is saying is about that it is about staying strong, having our inner strength and staying strong in the midst of massive change that is wanting to happen, and how we do that. There is also Mercury is in Scorpio is conjunct the planet Venus, and that is often a sign of communication. Venus wants to connect with others, and Mercury is the mind and communication and language and speech. But something that came up on the trip to Egypt that I want to share with you that I feel is very appropriate for this particular symbol. I was at the Sphinx, and I got a message from the Sphinx that landed just right in my heart. And it said, speak from the heart and say only what needs to be said. And I walked in on this trip to Egypt really with that teaching. And I actually spent a lot of time in silence and really filtering myself as to what really needed to be said. Just because I think it doesn't mean it actually needs to be said. And that it also means there are important things that need to be said, and to be able to share what is real and what is authentic, and maybe just simply not a lot of small talk. you might find yourself really wanting to keep more to yourself. I spent a lot of time in silence on this journey because it's where I needed to be. And I found it was very healing and very nourishing. And you might find in this Scorpio new moon, which I do want to say really it sets the energy for the whole month, that periods of silence and deep contemplation may be, and there may be other ways to communicate than words. Mercury is in the retrograde zone. Mercury in Scorpio goes retrograde on October 31st, and it goes direct again on November 20th. And so we're going to be in Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. And Mercury in Scorpio is, one of the meanings is called, his ancient Greek name was Hermes, and it's Hermes psychopomp. It is the part of our consciousness that can travel to other realms. And so there might be some mediumship and communications from the other side if you take the time to listen. It really is about listening deeply. Listening is every bit as important as talking. And this is a time of listening, and I'm going to say being in the silence and saying only what needs to be said. And you might find that following that might really be helpful. And a time of deep contemplation and reflection. And Mercury retrograde is always a time of reassessing, reevaluating, rethinking our whatever is going on in our life. It's not always a time to make decisions. It is a time of reevaluating what is happening. And so you may find yourself in deep contemplation during this time. Then the last thing that I would like to talk about is Mars. Mars is at 15 degrees of Libra, and it's in a square to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. Well, Libra is the sign of Ma'at. It is the sign of balance. It is the sign of the scales. And so Mars is the warrior. Mars is also about direction. It is about just do it. And so with Mars and Libra, one of the meanings it says to me is about being a warrior for Ma'at. Ma'at is the truth. Ma'at is the small truth, which is our personal truth, and how our personal truth is aligned with the big truth, the cosmic truth. And it is about fighting for justice and what brings this world back into balance and harmony. And so being warriors for Ma'at, there comes a time when everyone has to be a warrior for the truth. And it feels like this is a time for us now. And being in a square to Saturn and Pluto, Saturn is very much, a Mars-Saturn square can feel like driving with the brakes on. It's about slowing us down, not getting ahead of ourselves, reassessing, especially in this time of Mercury retrograde, reassessing our direction, reassessing how does our truth line up with the bigger truth? How are our actions impacting our world, and are they in alignment with what we know in our hearts to be true? Because Ma'at is about the truth of our heart once again, and the truth is our hearts always know the truth, but our actions lined up with the truth that we know to be in our heart. And so Saturn really helps us to slow down and look at that. And sometimes our plans don't work out because something is out of alignment. So it's really looking at that. If something isn't working out, what may be out of alignment that needs an adjustment? It needs to come back into alignment. Mars and Pluto together has the ability to move mountains. It's a tremendous power, but square is a challenge. So we may come into power struggles with others and also within ourselves. And so it feels to me like a piece of this is about the inner journey. It is a time when we can move mountains if we are in alignment with the truth and if we have done our inner work. Because if we take our own baggage into the fight of what's happening in the outer world, that's what we end up fighting, is our own inner demons. So it's so important to be clear about what you're fighting for, and coming from a place of wholeness and not woundedness. So this is a time, it feels to me, of the potential to slow down, look within, heal our own selves, and as we do, get the direction and guidance that we need to move forward about how we are aligned with, how our truth is aligned with the bigger truth. And so I feel like it is very much about the only way out is in. This is very much of an inner journey. And in the Egyptian world, the belief was that the outer world is contained within the inner world. And so as we do our inner work, we actually are impacting the outer world. And so wishing you all well in this Scorpio new moon. It lasts about 29 days. And like I said, to just be mindful, once again, we're going into a Mercury retrograde time, and things do slow down, communications do slow down. And it's really about looking for the truth within your heart is what you're being asked to reassess and look at. All right. Aho, thank you, and have a wonderful month until we meet again.